Let me tell you something about politics and their penchant for drama. They have a knack for taking a kernel of truth, covering it with a thick layer of fear, and serving it up as a full-blown crisis. The latest serving comes from Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, who recently claimed that cannabis, yes, cannabis, is now laced with fentanyl, and it's all because of Biden's administration's border policies. You heard that right. He's saying our teenagers are at risk of fatal overdoses because apparently there's fentanyl in the weed. Now let's break this down. Vance, who's currently Donald Trump's VP pick, tells a crowd in Wisconsin that he's spoken to a police officer who warned him about fentanyl-laced cannabis bags. He goes on to say that this is why he, as a parent, is worried about his kids experimenting with cannabis or anything else for that matter, because according to him, it could now kill them. Now, first off, let's talk about the irony here. Vance is one of those Republicans who loves to wax poetic about states' rights, the idea that states should decide their own laws without federal interference. Remember how they all cheered when Roe v. Wade was overturned, insisting that abortion laws should be up to the states. Yet, when it comes to cannabis, a legal product in many states, Vance seems more interested in spreading fear than respecting those state laws. So much for consistency. But there's more to the story. Advocates, even some state regulators, have been quick to debunk this narrative about fentanyl and cannabis. They call it a misconception, a story spun by law enforcement and amplified by media looking for a scare headline. Vance didn't bother to mention that. He's more interested in stirring up fear than talking about real solutions, like implementing regulatory frameworks that ensure cannabis is safe and free from dangerous contaminants. And let's not forget about the bigger picture. Vance and his Republican colleagues love to talk about leaving decisions up to states until they don't. In places like Texas, Republican governors aren't letting voters decide on issues like cannabis legalization or even women's basic rights. Instead, they're ramming through unpopular laws like those draconian anti-abortion measures. It's all about control, and it's not about respecting the will of the people. Vance's comments also reveal another hypocrisy. He's worried about his kids making a mistake with cannabis, a concern that many parents share. But instead of advocating for a regulated legal market that could actually help mitigate these risks, he clings to prohibitionist views. He's against cannabis legalization, even though a regulated market would mean fewer contaminants and more safeguards. It's almost as if he's more interested in scaring his base than actually solving problems. Now, don't get me wrong, Vance isn't entirely without nuisance. He said that states should set their own cannabis laws, and he's indicated that he's not in favor of incarcerating people for low-level possession. But then he turns around and votes against bipartisan efforts to create a safe banking environment for cannabis businesses, complains about the smell of cannabis, and even suggests that it can lead to violence. It's like he's talking out of both sides of his mouth, 1 minute supporting states' rights, the next undermining the very systems that could make cannabis safer for everyone. And he's not at this and alone. Last year, Representative Vern Buchanan of Florida tried to push an amendment requiring a study on fentanyl-laced cannabis. It didn't make it to the floor, but the mere fact that it was proposed shows how deeply these scare tactics have permeated into politics. Meanwhile, former presidential hopeful Vivek Ramaswamy.
Vivek Ramaswamy.
Okay. Oh, well, whatever. Who cares about it? I mean, he was out there claiming that China is somehow involved in producing fentanyl-laced CBD gummies. It's all part of the same fear-mongering playbook. Then there's Trump, the master of mixed messages. Last week, he said he's starting to agree that maybe people shouldn't be jailed for cannabis, especially since it's being legalized across the country. He didn't come right out and endorse legalization, but he did point out the absurdity of having people in jail for something that is legal in many states. That is a significant departure from the usual tough on drugs stance rhetoric, but it's also classic Trump, always keeping you guessing where he really stands. So where does this leave us? With a lot of noise, a lot of fear, and not much progress. Vance and his colleagues need to stop trying to scare their voters into submission and start focusing on the realities of modern America. That means respecting the states' rights, embracing regulated markets, and addressing the real issues, not just the ones that look good on a campaign flyer. But then again, what's the fun in that? It's much easier to conjure up imaginary boogeymen than do the hard work of governing. Unfortunately, while they're busy spinning their tails, the rest of us are left to deal with the consequences. I'm Stone Slade, reporting for the High at 9 News.
Oh man, Stoner, did you get one of those flame torches? Because there's a lot of gaslighting going on in this story.
Stop it! What are you talking about?
Just saying. Yeah, no, JD Vance. We should probably have a conversation in regards, because this law enforcement officer totally gaslit you up on this one. I wish he would have said something like, show me some proof of this or whatnot. I don't doubt for a second that a law enforcement officer went up to them and told him this. So that seems totally within what is the scope of could actually happen. So he just needs to evolve on the issue. Needs to see some evidence that every single one of those stories have been proven false, and we're still waiting on evidence from the most recent one out of Connecticut.
Mm-hmm.
Oh boy, we're fucking up. This was not a win for the Republican Party right now during this election year. It's really not. But I should have covered, and I'll cover it tomorrow. There's another article about Kamala and her policies, and that the reschedule would just kind of ruin.
Oh, we already know that.
Hope of a deschedule, which is what we've been saying, right? So I don't know. I think cannabis is not going to be the one issue that you can vote on in this presidential election because both sides are full of shit.
Well, I'll say this much in regards with any of that. We just did, as you did state in your article, that Trump did just come out in favor of the criminal justice reform aspects in regards with cannabis. And so I'm expecting him to ultimately just take this issue from the Democrats and tell them that he'll go with a full deschedule and eliminate the rescheduling.
Which would be wonderful.
Which would be the best thing that could happen for us, period. And then what do you say? Stone, if Trump deschedules cannabis? What are you going to have to stand on?
I mean,
his boots.
Not that.
Exactly. Exactly.
All the other stuff.
Yarrow, what do you think about this?
So, I'm not a fan of either presidential candidate, but I do think from a vice president perspective, the Democrats have a better VP by leaps and bounds. That said, I think you made a good point, Jason, which is a lot of times policymakers, politicians get their information from other sources. And if this gentleman, Vance, got his information from law enforcement has unfortunately perpetuated this thing around the fentanyl-laced cannabis. And the article talks about how that's a perpetuation of something that has, for the most part, been debunked. And what bothers me more is fentanyl is the biggest threat to this generation. And what I would have appreciated from a vice president was some substantive ideas around how to curtail fentanyl use in this country. If all he can do is poke a stick in the eye of the Biden administration by talking about their border policies, it takes less of a man to identify the problem than it does to talk about potential solution. And so Vance doesn't feel very vice presidential when he's complaining about something instead of campaigning on proposals that he thinks will keep our children safer. And so I think he missed the opportunity. If you're going to lead with the whole fentanyl thing, which is scary. We've had teenagers in our small little town die from this. This is a real issue. This is the reason why the DEA should still be around.
Exactly.
Fentanyl is a massive, massive risk. But if you are going to run for the second highest office in the executive branch and your coverage in an article doesn't include anything about how you plan to do a better job, come on. That's some bullshit.
That's the thing. He could have hammered the Biden administration about the border crisis and fentanyl without using cannabis as the fucking
Yeah, he didn't need. Yeah, exactly. He didn't need to go that. I feel like it kind of detracted from the argument. You're right.
And fish rots from the head down. So part of this article covered that Trump was criticizing Mrs. Harris around her record as a prosecutor. And he is right that I believe more black men went to jail for cannabis under her watch as district attorney than the previous 3 district attorneys in San Francisco combined. And if you think that she's for the people, why don't you talk to Millie Jamal Truelove, who was incarcerated for 7 years and framed by the police under her leadership for a murder he didn't commit.
Very true.
And she had to be compelled and forced to give up the evidence that was sitting on her desk that would have exonerated that man. Yep.
But while she was doing a terrible job as a district attorney and actually got a law degree, Trump was probably sniffing bumps off a hooker's ass and just wallowing in daddy's money. So instead of him talking about the things that he's done that make him extraordinary and worthy for a vote, again, he is criticizing the other person because what Trump does a really good job of is always weaponizing it and making it about other people. He doesn't talk about himself and what he's going to do in a way that is inspiring leadership. He is,
I don't know about all
the
that.
whiner. He is the whiner in chief.
He
and
said,
so I
fight,
just
fight,
wish,
fight. That was pretty inspiring.
It was pretty inspiring.
Not really. Not when
100%,
you're
bro. You just got shot and you're standing up and the crowd's all still there. Normally when there's gunshots, everybody runs. And that didn't
which
happen.
shows he has bad judgment because he should
I
have
don't
ducked
know
for
about
cover.
it. No, I
He
don't
has no tactical judgment because he made it into a photo op instead of covering. If he's going to be the breath of leadership in the Oval Office, I would hope a motherfucker could either get a bulletproof vest or duck when a Secret Service wants him to duck.
No,
and
I
frankly,
think the ability to
the same
think
Secret
that's-
Service
that's
that
way-
allowed that
way too
shooter on the
far.
roof
That's way too
is the
far.
same Secret Service that should have put him down and not let him do the photo op and said, "Sorry, sir, I got to keep you covered because there might be another shooter."
You've gone way off of the rails this morning.
That's
already.
what I'm here
But
for.
Yeah, you went way too far off of
Somebody
off of the
snap
tracks this
Yarrow
morning.
back into his high
exactly.
chair. We got to keep this going.
Exactly.
for
We need,
conspiracy.
someone change the diaper. Something.
Can we?
something.
Well, no, for conspiracies,
Yeah.
but can we just?
My diaper is on Trump's ear.
Yeah. Well, but the one thing though, Stone, that you did mention is why they brought the Chinese into it. Well, the fact of the matter is that fentanyl comes from China, is all produced in China, comes into Mexico, and then comes across the border. So, like those, they're not wrong when they say those things.
But what are they doing about it? What do they plan to do about it? What's the approach?
Well, I think that's part of the point is that if Kamala wanted the border closed down, she's the border czar. She could do that right now.
Right.
She doesn't need to wait till day one. Why not? Today is day one. Day one was
ago.
Exactly.
100%. Yeah, we're seeing a lot more posturing from her and a lot more when I get there, there's more work to do type rhetoric. Like, this is bullshit. Please don't reelect this woman just because you believe that she's gonna start doing something that she hasn't for the last 3.5 fucking years.
Is it not a fact that border crossings are down now than what they were against Trump?
Stop the
Not
cap, bro.
the first 3 years, fucking let them all in. They all came pouring in, but they've got it down now below the numbers that were Trump had them.
Bro,
No,
I'm not.
I just
Stone,
gotta say
you are so you got TDS so bad right now. But it's okay.
The argument that there's more work to be done doesn't work when you're the incumbent.
Exactly.
It barely plays.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, there's more work to be done. What have you done the last 3.75 years? That is
Exactly.
super tone deaf.
Exactly.